Good evening. It is Pastor Trish, and I am back after a mini Sabbath, I think I'm going to call it. Um, but I am just going to, okay, I think I'm live. I hope I'm live. Now it looks like I'm live. Okay, it's Pastor Trish. I'm back after a mini Sabbath. I hope that you were able to enjoy some of the Advent greetings that a variety of members at Messiah did throughout the month of December, late November, and all of December. If you didn't get a chance, they are, of course, posted out there, and you can meet some of or reacquaint yourself with some of your Messiah church family. And I appreciate having the time off, but I'm excited to be back with you, sharing devotions with you a couple nights a week. I'm going to do them Mondays and Thursdays now. And we are going to get back into the Psalms and we're going to pick up where we left off. If you remember, if you've been one of my faithful uh, viewers, participants, colleagues in this, you'll remember that in November we did a month of Psalms of Thanksgiving. And so as we come upon some of those, we will skip past those. There's I don't know, 8 or so, I think, that we'll be skipping past. But we are starting tonight by going to Psalm 93. So that's where we're picking up. Psalm 93, and it's considered an enthronement psalm, which means that it's a psalm that would have been used in worship for the king, or as part of a coronation, or some sort of royal festival, those kinds of things. It's a pretty short psalm, and it talks about God being our true king. And it uses a lot of imagery and um, words about nature as well, and how nature itself bows down and worships the true king, which of course is the Lord, Yahweh, God. And it talks about really our place in that we may worship God, but let us not forget that all of creation worships God. um, uh, uh, Biblical scholarly tidbit perhaps for you this evening is the psalm talks about water. And what is helpful for you to know, in the ancient world, or at the time that these psalms would have been written, the view of water, or the symbolism of water, was that water was chaos. And it makes sense, right? When you think about the damage that water can do, when you think about the power, um, the velocity, uh, the furiousness of water. And so it was often viewed as chaos and was symbolic of that. And so this psalm will talk about how God can even bring water under control, that even water itself, all of chaos, is under God's reign. Okay, so here's the psalm. And I thought this evening I am going to read it from the Message translation. You probably know that the Message is a very modern paraphrase of the original, in this case, Hebrew. And so it's a modern translation that you will hear. But this is Psalm 93. God is king, robed and ruling. God is robed and surging with strength. And yes, the world is firm, immovable. Your throne ever firm, you're eternal. Sea storms are up, God. Sea storms wild and roaring, sea storms with thunderous breakers, stronger than wild sea storms, mightier than sea storm breakers. Mighty God rules from high heaven. What you say goes, it always has. Beauty and holy mark your palace rule, God, to the very end of time. So, a couple reminders that this psalm gives us. One certainly is the power that nature has, and the importance of understanding and remembering that God rules all of creation. We often think, like we're the center of God's creation and we're the most important part. And yes, we are created in God's image, but let us not forget that all of creation is God's handiwork, and all of creation praises God. Steve and I, a couple of weeks ago, were having this conversation about trees and how scientists are believing that trees communicate with one another and support one another, right? Creation, think about migration of birds, think about the power of storms. There is so much about nature that we don't understand. And so thinking about that and remembering how all of that is under God's rule as well is an important key. And it helps us remember our place, that we're not always the end all and be all. And I think the other message that this psalm is giving me, particularly again this week, with our continued chaos in our national political scene, no matter what you think, I think we can all agree there's a lot of chaos in our world, from our elected leaders or um, from that aspect. And what we want to be able to remember is that ultimately our our final ruler, our ultimate ruler, the most important ruler in our lives are not our elected officials, but it's God. And that God's rule, God's word, God's way is what we all want to desire and to follow. And ultimately, I think if we all did that, and we're all able to do that, hard work, of course, we would all be better off. So God's rule is what we are understanding tonight over all of creation, and we are just one small piece of that. Psalm 93. All right, thanks for joining me, and I will be back again on Thursday. Have a good night.